From the death of an American in the Bahamas to evidence of the oldest known victim of a shark attack, here are 10 of the craziest and most savage shark attacks you'll never believe. Number 10. Death in the Bahamas. An American woman has been killed by a shark near Rose Island in the Bahamas. According to local authorities, it all happened while Jordan Lindsay of California was swimming with her family. They had gone as a group to do a bit of snorkeling. The police said in a statement that they believe Jordan was not only attacked by a single aggressive shark, but actually bitten by at least 3 different sharks. The poor girl was only 21 years old. She was with her father, her 2 brothers, and a mother, and yet all the sharks ganged up on her, ripping Jordan to shreds so fast that nobody even had time to react. By the time anyone realized what was going on, it was too late. Jordan's mother was just feet away as the sharks were taking bites out of her daughter. She managed to get Jordan back to shore after the vicious and sudden attack, but it was too late. The sharks did some pretty good damage to Jordan. Her right arm was torn off completely, her left arm was gnawed on like a piece of corn, and both of her legs were shredded like she'd gone through a cheese grater. Emergency services showed up quickly, but by the time they managed to transport Jordan to the hospital, she was already dead. Jordan was a student at Loyola Marymount University and will be dearly missed by her family and friends. Number 9. Surfing instructor. A Georgia surf instructor had a close brush with death when a shark just about ripped his entire leg off. This happened in the waters off Tybee Island. The instructor's name is Atsushi Yamada, known locally as Hot Sushi. He works at the Hot Sushi's Happy Surf Camp helping youngsters master the sport of surfing. Yamada, who was born in Japan, was sitting on his board in the water with a student when the shark began circling. He noticed the ferocious beast but couldn't react in time, and suddenly he felt what he described as being hit by a baseball bat. It was the shark's teeth trying to take a bite out of him. Yamada managed to keep the student with him safe, taking the full brunt of the attack. The shark left him with 3 huge gashes on his leg, then fled back into the deeper water. Yamada got to shore and corralled all of his students out of the water. The beach was closed for the day, and just later that same week, he was back out surfing. According to Yamada himself, he believes it was probably an Atlantic black-tip shark or bull shark that attacked him. He also said that he is grateful that the shark went after him and not one of his students. He never really got a good look at it. The creature swooped in, took a bite, and then swam away. Number 8. Bitten by a shark, punched by a monkey. Eric Norrie has had some pretty bad luck with nature. He was recently recovering from a near-death experience he had in the Bahamas when a shark bit off a piece of his leg during a spearfishing trip. According to Eric, the shark grabbed his leg, he heard a ripping sound, and when he turned around, the water was filled with blood. He had to use part of his spearfishing equipment to make a crude tourniquet to stop himself from bleeding to death as he desperately swam back to the sandbar. He really thought he was going to die. But believe it or not, this is not Eric's first brush with death. He's had some other pretty nasty encounters with nature and her creatures. It started when he was only 10 years old. A tree he was standing under was struck by lightning, sending him backwards as if a bomb had exploded in front of him. Later on in life, he was attacked by a rattlesnake while taking a stroll around a country club and nearly lost his leg, kind of like what happened with the most recent shark attack. But perhaps the weirdest animal encounter came from a trip to the Amazon, in which Eric was attacked by a monkey. And then it happened again a second time when his wife locked him in a cage with a small monkey as a practical joke, only to have the monkey bite him and try to claw his eyes out. And now, after surviving this latest shark encounter, Eric feels like he and Mother Nature have reached something of a stalemate. Why do you think Eric has such terrible luck with animals? Number 7. Jet ski attack. A man in Queensland, Australia, on a jet ski was recently attacked by a shark off the coast of North Stradbroke Island. And to be honest, it was kind of his fault. He had actually spotted about 5 of the huge animals with his drone even before he got in the water. Rick Manning then decided he wanted to get closer to the sharks using a jet ski. He thought it would be fun to circle the deadly animals. It turned out not to be the best idea because one of them attacked. According to what Manning told 7 News Australia, the shark lunged at him with such fury that he could see the animal's teeth as they just about clamped down on his foot. He knew at that moment he had made a serious error. The shark was about 3 meters long. It was a kind of bull shark. Its teeth so sharp and deadly that it actually managed to rip off a piece of the jet ski. It ripped right through the fiberglass. This is no surprise considering bull sharks are some of the most aggressive sharks in the water, named after bulls because of how huge and heavy they are. According to the International Shark Attack file, bull sharks are responsible for somewhere around 100 unprovoked human attacks, with about 25 fatalities. However, there are probably dozens, if not hundreds more attacks that have not been reported. As for Manning and his shark encounter, he was almost knocked off the jet ski but managed to cling onto it for dear life. He was then so frightened that he sped back to shore and refused to get back in the water, which is, what you do when there are sharks right there. Number 6. Lifeguard Attacked. While on duty at Hilton Head Island, a lifeguard was attacked brutally and mercilessly by a crazy shark. The lifeguard has not been named for privacy reasons, but we do know that the Hilton Head Island Fire Rescue responded to a 911 call at about 11:45 in the morning and needed to transport the lifeguard to the nearest hospital so that he could be airlifted to Savannah for immediate treatment. The lifeguard suffered deep lacerations to his upper body but was relatively stable when transported to the hospital. Unsurprisingly, this was not the first shark attack on the East Coast this year. It actually happened about a week after the surfing instructor at Sushi Yamada was attacked in Georgia. And what makes this really strange is that in both cases, experts believe the shark responsible was a blacktip. But could it be the same shark? It's unlikely, but not impossible. The blacktip may have bitten the Japanese surf instructor in Georgia and then swam his merry little way down to South Carolina to bite the lifeguard. Do you think it was the same shark? Maybe this particular shark was just having a rough month. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 5. Drunk and disorderly. A day at the beach turned into a deadly affair when a man waded into the water to pee. This is a prime example of why you should never pee in the ocean. Just minutes after the drunk man waddled into the water to relieve himself, bystander Adriano Gomez witnessed a surge of blood in the water like something out of the movie Jaws. The victim in this scenario was Marcelo Rocha Santos, a 51-year-old man who had been drinking with friends. It was the middle of the afternoon and everyone was having an awesome time. Rather than seeking out a toilet, Marcelo simply walked into the water to do his business in the glory of nature. But what he didn't realize was that when he began to relieve himself, he was doing so on top of a shark. He literally peed directly onto the apex predator. Not the smartest move. As you can imagine, the shark was not super happy about this. In retaliation for being peed on, the shark bit off Marcelo's hand with one great chomp and then ripped off a massive piece of his leg. His friend was even standing beside him when it happened and couldn't believe his eyes. His buddies managed to drag him back to safety. After all, they were only in water up to their waists. But it was too late. Marcelo lay lifeless and bloody in the sand. He bled out from his wounds and could not be revived. Number 4. Close encounter. A young girl in Maryland has been horribly wounded in a suspected shark attack while swimming in water only up to her knees. This girl was just 12 years old and left the encounter with at least 20 teeth wounds that required dozens of stitches. She was vacationing with her family in Ocean City when she felt something brush against her shins. Then, all of a sudden, she was bleeding everywhere. The poor girl was only in 6th grade at the time and had to awkwardly stomp out of the water, leaving a trail of blood behind. Luckily, it must have been a very small shark that attacked her. The girl's father scooped her up in his arms and rushed her to safety. An EMT nurse who happened to be nearby helped stop the bleeding, and she was rushed to the hospital where she got 42 stitches. The photos uploaded online of the bite are pretty gnarly. Whatever chomped the girl had a huge mouth and left its imprint forever scarred just below her knee. She was actually quite lucky that it didn't come back for another bite, or she might have lost half her leg. Number 3. The oldest shark attack. About 3,000 years ago, off the southeastern coast of Japan, a man was killed by a shark. After the brutal attack, the victim was brought back to shore missing their right leg and left hand. They were then buried in the sand, where they rested peacefully until just recently, when archaeologists got a hold of the victim's bones. A new analysis of the man's partial skeleton, excavated over 100 years ago from a village cemetery near the Seto Inland Sea, has revealed that the man comes from the ancient Jomon culture of Japan. He is also the oldest known human victim of a deadly shark attack in history, according to archaeologist J. Alyssa White from the University of Oxford. Radiocarbon dating put his death at anywhere from 3,391 to 3,031 years ago. The team identified at least 790 gouges and punctures left behind by the shark. They believe that the victim probably lost his left hand trying to beat the shark away, then was killed by a series of devastating bites that ripped open his major leg arteries and caused him to rapidly bleed to death. When he was recovered from the ocean, his mutilated left leg was probably barely hanging on by a thread, and whoever buried him put it on his chest before shoveling dirt onto his grave. Number 2. Jackass Sharks. While filming a stunt for Shark Week, one of the stars of the hit film series Jackass was nearly eaten. The filming was done for an episode called Jackass Shark Week, featuring members of the original Jackass crew like Steve-O and Chris Pontius. They were doing stunts for science, but it didn't really work out. Pontius tried to get a bull shark to charge at him as if it was a real bull. They dangled bait, trying to get bit on purpose, and Steve-O got good and sweaty on an exercise bike before leaping into the water to see if bull sharks were able to smell human sweat. But the last stunt proved to be the deadliest. When another member of the crew, McInerney, tried to jump over the sharks on a wakeboard, he missed the landing, splashed into the water, and was immediately swarmed by hungry Caribbean reef sharks. One of the sharks took a bite out of his hand. The crew and the medics jumped into action to save him, and they managed to get him out of the water just in time before another shark took yet another bite out. The bite was so brutal that the shooting had to be stopped, and McInerney was taken away in a speedboat for medical attention. Number 1. Surfing disaster. A horrifying recent death in Australia just goes to show that sharks really don't care how old you are. To them, you're really just a floating bag of meat. At Walleye Beach on a Saturday afternoon, Manny Hart DeVille, a 15-year-old surfer, was mauled to death by an unidentified shark. He was catching some waves, getting some good stunts in, when the shark sabotaged him on his surfboard, ripping a chunk out of his upper left thigh. Shortly after his friends dragged him to shore, Manny bled out from his injuries and was pronounced dead. First aid did nothing to help, and there was no stopping the blood gushing out of his leg. CPR efforts failed to revive him, and the young man stopped breathing and went cold still on the beach. Manny lived in the small coastal village where he surfed, and that community has been devastated by the attack. A statement from the Clarence Valley Council said that the community would be hurting for the young boy's tragic death, and while the attack was described as shocking, there's not really anything shocking about getting eaten by a shark in Australia. As you can tell from today's video, it happens so frequently that if you even dare step foot in the water, you're fair game. I mean, you are stepping into the shark's house. Even just wading up to your knees can result in a shark biting off your legs. Thanks for watching. How do you feel about swimming with sharks? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to hit the subscribe button and come back again for another awesome video. See you next time. Bye!